At some point on my journey, I really had to decide if I wanted to live in scarcity anymore. And that's not to say that you can get rid of your fear, because we're human beings and fear is part of that experience. But to understand the dynamic of abundance and finding it within you is a really profound experience. So to find that connection for me, it was definitely a spiritual ride, and it has covered off an array of things like my health, my prosperity, my relationships, my purpose, you name it, becoming a parent. It was all on it wasn't one move that got me to find, really tap into that abundance and use it moment to moment. I think it's built up over time, understanding duality and really using that muscle, the energetic muscle, to tap into it and move from that place. Wasn't one place, wasn't one thing. And everybody's story is different. So I've called upon some friends and abundance experts I know and love and to support us along our journey, because by no means am I finished. And I think that's part of the reason I started this podcast. And so I welcome you. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Your Abundance Podcast. It's a space for you to expand your abundance. I'm Erin Trethowan, your host and your guide on this transformative journey. And I'm thrilled to have you co-creating this podcast with me. You calling in for answers, me calling in for answers, and my desire to ask questions is a great match. I'm really clear about the fact that I want this to be a place for you to expand, provide insight, lessons, and tools that you can carry on your own personal journey to abundance within you. Before we dive in to your abundance conversations, I invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoy what we share, because your feedback fuels our mission and helps us reach more hearts in search of abundance. So if you're ready to expand your horizons and blow your mind and step into the energetic world of abundance, and your answer is yes, let's embark on another episode of Your Abundance Podcast. And now a word from our partners. You know I don't just partner with anyone, and that applies to love, life, and business, because let's be real, I've learnt my lesson too many times. I've been in business for nearly 11 years, and prior to that in marketing and advertising for 20. So I've used a lot of marketing tools. Some were okay, some were clunky and had no flow, and some were just downright no. The biggest shift I made in business was ditching the bro marketing models, the overcomplicated funnels, the outdated systems, all the things that made marketing feel harder than it needed to be. I wanted marketing that aligned with my soul, something that actually felt good as a woman in business. Then Flowdesk came along. If you haven't heard of it, it's an email marketing platform built by women for women-led businesses that actually makes marketing easy. It's intuitive, it's easy, and honestly, it's just beautiful. I use it for myself, I use it for my clients, and it's become a must-have in my business. It's given me back time, flow, and the kind of marketing that I actually enjoy. So when they came to me this year and asked me to partner with them, it was an easy hell yes. Now I get to share it with you too, and because I'm a Flowdesk partner, you get 50% off for the entire year too. Grab your discount in the show notes and experience it for yourself, because marketing should feel easy. That's the point. It's not just another thing on your to-do list. Now, let's get back to this week's episode.
Hello, Joanna. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here on the Your Abundance inaugural podcast. I am deeply grateful that you said yes, and I'm so looking forward to embarking on a journey for your journey in abundance, and also for our audience to expand them on their journey with abundance, offering them tools and ways that they can expand themselves, which is the objective of the podcast. Firstly, I just want to say welcome to our listeners. We've got Joanna here. She is an absolute rock star when it comes to abundance and the connection to source. And she is a metaphysical teacher, author, speaker, and channel for the transcendent collective consciousness known as Skylar. She's on a soulful mission, and she's here to weave the teachings of Skylar into the fabric of the earth, reviving magic, abundance, and a profound connection to source. I believe, as well as that Joanna brings a refreshing, no-nonsense approach. Personally, I have experienced coaching with Joanna, so I've been very blessed. Often hailed as the most down-to-earth woo coach you've ever encountered, which I would agree with. Very much so.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And it's extra special because it's the first one. And so I am extremely honored to talk all things abundance. And I love the name of your podcast, Your Abundance. I think it's such a great, because it is our abundance, right? It comes from an internal place. We tend to look for abundance in the outer world and we try to make it an external thing, but it truly is your abundance. It is an internal game every single time.
Every time. I don't think I've ever experienced it where it hasn't been an internal game. Your pathway to where you are now was an interesting journey. Can you share a little bit about that for the audience before we dive into the
Absolutely. So I grew up with my spiritual gifts switched on, but then I had this kind of very weird love of business. Even my mum tells these stories as a young child, I didn't play with dolls in the normal way. All my Barbies and Cindy's were all CEOs, and I made shops and businesses for them. And that's how I played with my dolls, but I didn't actually literally play with them in the sort of more traditional way that children might play with dolls. I was bored after I had made them their business and lined up all the little shoes because this one had a shoe shop and this one had a dress shop and things like that. And business and spirituality, I never ever thought that they would mix. And for a long time, I kept them at opposite ends. And I remember doing corporate coaching and doing coaching for people like Specsavers and doing a wee stint there for Tesco's as well. And really praying that they wouldn't know that at the weekends I was a medium and spoke to dead people and stuff like that.
Oh, that's exactly.
Because I was terrified of the two worlds meeting. And then I went through a massive burnout and I really turned to my spiritual side. And that's literally what healed me and what helped me to do that and recover from that. And as I did that, I knew I just couldn't ignore or push down the spiritual side. I would have to find a way that I could integrate it with what I was doing. So I began to integrate the spiritual with business and to great effect. And so when I first started this business, I was at the tail end of the recovery from multiple organ failure, which is how my birth resulted. I'd been told that I wouldn't survive and that I needed to prepare my family for my passing and that I wouldn't leave the hospital. And spoiler alert, I make it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it was a real wake up call. It was a real moment. And there was a decision there that I basically said, this is not how my story ends. But from that point onwards, my life changed drastically. And I went from having built several businesses, like multiple six-figure businesses in my early 20s and having lots of money moving through my life, never really able to keep any of it. It was just literally constantly flowing through. And so what I ended up with is I ended up going from that kind of state of energy to living on welfare and benefit system, the UK benefit system, which was a very humbling experience and was a real reality check. And from that space of receiving housing benefit, from receiving like universal tax credits, they're called now in the UK, from receiving all of that and help with things like school meals for the kids and stuff like that, from that, in the period of 6 years, I grew my business from that living on welfare, dependent on those payments for survival, And in 6 years, I crossed $1 million in 2021 for one calendar year in sales. And
Wow.
within 2 years of starting the business, I had retired my husband from his day job and brought my daughter home from her day job and completely transformed. And all of it using the power of my mind and creating the internal game for abundance.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the $1 million experiment happening, and we'll touch on that in a bit because I want to talk to you about that mindset and the internal changes that you made and how you got to the experiment as well for everybody else to join you. I want to know through that, that's a feat to yourself just to get through that. Obviously, you're on your deathbed to multiple, like, crazy change in 2 years, to be honest. And what do you think from an abundance point of view? But when we talk about abundance, we do have to talk about lack and scarcity. They go hand in hand. What do you think your biggest lesson was? Obviously, you burnt out, but in the move to make those changes, what was the biggest lesson about lack that you learned on your journey through?
That is a juicy question. I don't know if there's one biggest lesson. There's several lessons that really stand out for me. The first one is stories. What stories are you telling yourself? So we have a light tool in one of my programs called Lightweb that is called the Stories tool. And we ask these 3 questions. Is it true? Is it real? Is it mine? And when we are talking these scarcity stories, are they actually true? Are they actually, is it true? Is it real? Are they real? Or are they mine? And when we ask these 3 very important questions, we start to see a picture that is other than the reality that we're currently telling ourselves. So I'll give you an example. Recently, I actually caught my own mother up on this recently. So here in the UK at the moment, there is this thing like a big cost of living crisis. And a lot of people are upset over it. And a lot of people are feeling that lack. They're feeling that pinch. So my mum is in full flow telling me all about the cost of living crisis. And so I said to my mum, are you telling me that you're financially struggling right now? Because we can help you. No, I'm okay. I said, are you able to cover all your bills? Yes. I said, do you have enough food? And are you afraid to put your heating on? Are you okay? Are you okay? And my mum's, yeah, okay. So I says, let me get this right. There is a cost of living crisis of which you are able to afford all of your food. You're able to afford all of your bills. And everything is okay in your life right now. By your own definition, it's okay. But everything is terrible because there's a cost of living crisis. And my mom was like, and I said, what is it? Is it true? Is it real? Is that story yours? Or is it something that you've watched the news and now you are adopting that story in?
Yeah.
And now you're making that story real for you, which is you're becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is the danger with news. This is the danger with taking our opinions from the outside world, because we encounter often when we encounter these like, there's a cost of living crisis, everything is screwed, everything is terrible. Often when we encounter those stories for the very first time, if we were to check in with ourselves, we're okay. But we keep telling the story again and again, and the lack starts creeping in. And the worst thing is, and I think this is probably also the best thing, but the worst thing is we are a sacred creator. We're creating our reality as we're going along, and we're creating our reality through the stories that we tell. So be careful where you're picking your stories up. And there's this thing that bounds about the spiritual world every so often. I think it's like on a little circuit, and it does a lap every so often. You become like the 5 people you surround yourself with. And every so often this thing will lash around on Facebook or TikTok or wherever you are. And I agree with that to a certain extent. And what I agree with is that I don't believe that we become like the 5 people we spend most time with. What I believe is we become like the things that we give most attention to.
Yeah.
If you're giving a lot of attention to very depressing news, don't be surprised if depressing stuff starts showing up in your life. If you give attention to a lot of doom and gloom, do not be surprised that doom and gloom pays you a visit. We become, and this is why it's important to surround ourselves with things that lift our vibration and lift our frequency. And that was probably one of the biggest fundamental changes that I made. And it required my brain to be awake and switched on. It required my brain to say, is this the energy you want more of? And if it was a resounding no, I then had to make that choice to step away or disconnect from people, places, situations, whatever it was. Because if I had an idea that I wanted to create something different than that energy for my life, then I had no business engaging in that energy that was the opposite of what I was trying to create. And is it easy? No, because if it was, everybody would be doing it, right? It's challenging sometimes, but it gets easier and it gets easier, and eventually it becomes a way of life.
So I love that. And myself, I've come across many a time where a client's scarcity is not even close to what they think is going to be happening, whether they're homeless with no home in now, rather than, hang on a minute, you still have a job, there's certain aspects where they've created this doom and gloom story because they're not looking at the full picture and they're taking it for face value. I'm like, you're a good year away from homelessness right now. Like, where you're at in the situation, that scarcity can follow you even when you have money. Even when you have those things, it's actually the mindset shift that actually makes the difference in the feeling of abundance, because you can have money and still feel scared.
Absolutely. And I think for me, one of the big things was really learning to tell an honest story, like a real story, not the fake story, not the anxious story, not the worried story, not the fake energy, the fake news, really to tell the true story. Am I okay right now? And this is something that Skylar teaches, that there's 5 fears, and that all fear that we experience, whether it's stress or anxiety or worry over scarcity, boils down to one of 5 fears. And these 5 fears, Skylar called them the primal fears, because they really operate in the primal part of the brain. So the first fear that we have is that we're going to have a lack of food. The second fear that we have is that we're going to have a lack of shelter. And the third fear is that we're going to have a lack of water. And the fourth fear is very important for the Northern Hemisphere, that we're going to have a lack of warmth, right? Because in tropical countries, you could literally sleep on the beach and be all right. But in colder countries, that is a big deal. You could freeze to death. So we have a fear that we are not going to have access to warmth. And the final fear, I always call that the bonus fear, but it's the tribal fear, that we're going to be rejected by the tribe. And the reason why they're called primal fears is that they belong to the oldest part of the brain. They belong to the part of the brain where having a tribe meant survival, and having all of these things meant survival. But so when we are experiencing any type of worry or any type of things, know that it's going to boil down to one of those 5 fears. So we can use that as this kind of ultimate hack. Do I have enough to eat right now, right this second? Yes. Okay, good. Do I have access to water? You might, in the early days when I was shifting this mindset, I would go and run the tap in my house just to prove to myself that there was water there. Do I have shelter? I have spent many a time where and this might sound bonkers to some of your listeners, but I spent many a time where I've laid on the floor and looked at the ceiling, and to convince myself there's a roof over my head, because my fear system in my brain is screaming at me like, you're going to be homeless, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. But that's a false story, because right now there is a roof over my head, So that was a story that I was telling myself. Do I have people that I care about? Yeah. Do I have access to warmth? Can I put a blanket on? Can I put an extra jumper on if I'm cold? Do I need that? Do I have access to it? Yes. Once I've answered those 5 questions, and I can answer yes to all 5 of them in this present moment, never mind what's happening in a week's time, never mind what's happening in a month's time, because in a week's time, in a month's time, that energy has not happened yet. But in the present moment, we create the next moment with it. So if you can convince yourself that you are okay in this present moment, what you will do is you will use that energy of being okay in the present moment to create your next moment, which means it improves the percentage of your next moment being okay. And little by little, it goes from okay to great, because you start to realize, actually, I'm so lucky that I have those 5 primal fears covered and I'm good. And you realize how often we literally have lied to ourselves and told this story of like how screwed we are, how terrible everything is, how life is going to hell in a handbasket. And it's desperate. Just like those clients you were saying that they're like a year away from homelessness, but they're like full on like living like somebody's going to knock on their door and hand them a cardboard box and say, this is your home for the next 20 years of your life. But they're not there, and they're living as though they're there. And so it's important to anchor into the present moment, because it is only in the present moment we actually have power. There's no other moment. A lot of people like to think the power is in the future, and I want to create my future and things like that. You can't create your future from your future energy. You can only create your future from your present moment.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I don't think it's bonkers, because I think we look at the negative, we look for the negative naturally. And so to lie on the floor and look at your ceiling is actually a good thing to do if you're wanting to practice abundance, to remind yourself, because you would be looking at, oh, that person down the street lost their house and that happened on the news. And there was you could find millions of ways of people losing their house to prove, let alone prove that story can happen. And it is a calming thing in your body to do. Turn on the tap. Look at it. Oh, yeah, there is water. Oh, yeah, there's water in this cup. Like, that's really a really powerful move, I think. And one
it anchors you in to right now. It anchors you here and now. And another thing that I think really helped me was knowing about the 5 primal fears was game changing for me. That was really game changing for me, and learning to live more presently in the present moment, where I was always okay. And if you think about it, one of the things that I like to say to clients is you've got 100% track record of getting through life. So however old you are, that is how long your track record is of survival. And one of the other things that was massively game changing is understanding, you were talking about the negative bias. Now, that is a psychological recognized state of everybody's minds. We have a negative bias. Why do we have that negative bias? The reason we have the negative bias is because your brain is not hardwired for your happiness. Your brain is hardwired for your survival. The negative bias keeps you safe. It alerts you, and that's what fear is all about. Fear is not real. It's an illusionary state of energy. It is an alert, just like you get a notification on your phone to say that somebody left you a Facebook comment, right? But it is an alert of a potential danger.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just an alert of a potential danger. So when you're waking up and you're like, I'm going to be homeless, this is going to happen to me. That is your brain literally just saying, hey, you're on the road of life and we have picked up a potential danger. There is this potential danger. We would like you to know about it, right? And what happens is we get wrapped up in the story of the warning system. The warning system is just there to keep you safe. So when I understood that my brain wasn't wired for my happiness, my brain was wired for my survival. And it was very good at maintaining my survival. But what does it do in order to maintain my survival? What the brain really loves more than anything is an old episode of Cheers, where everyone knows your name. They just want it to be safe. They just want you to know all the things because that way the brain can calm down and be like, there is no danger in this room. Everything is okay. Everything is fine, right? It's like an old worn episode of Cheers. But if you want something different from your life, if you're looking around your life right now and you're thinking, hey, I would like change, I would like something to be different, then you have to understand that you are going to have to invoke higher consciousness. And if you want happiness for your life, you cannot rely on your brain to provide it. You have to rely on consciousness and conscious choice to be the thing that will provide it. And that was game changing. Realizing that if I wanted a happy and abundant life, it was something I would have to choose. It wasn't something that was going to naturally flow to my physical body, because even though it is my birthright, my physical body isn't wired for that. My physical body is wired to make sure that my heart beats in my chest and my lungs function. My physical body is so brutal that it's willing to sacrifice digits and limbs in order to keep that function, which is why if people go up a mountain that's very cold, they can get frostbite and start losing toes. That is your body's. We're not going to send any more blood supply to that area because we need to keep the heart and the lungs functioning. It is singular in its purpose to keeping the organism alive, right? Keep that brain, that heart, keep that lungs going. Everything else, it's willing to sacrifice the lot in order to keep the organism viable. And so when you start to understand that, that's your physiology, you can transcend your physiology through thought, through consciousness, through choice. And that means what's required for choice, like buzzword around spiritual circles, is awakening. You need to be awake for choice. Because if you're asleep, how can you choose? You have to be awake to choose. And when I started realizing that my happiness and my abundance were all down to me choosing, they were all down to me living in the present moment and choosing to live in that and not choosing to live and not listen to take the fear under advisement. Listen to the fear, hear the fear and say, okay, I see you. Thank you for warning me that there is zero in my bank account right now and that may lead to homelessness. Good job, fear. Thank you for the warning. But I'm good in the present moment right now and I'm choosing to create from here. And then you build it little by little and you begin to unfold your next level, basically.
Yeah, which leads me to the question, because you tapped into that higher consciousness of yourself, but you also access Skylar. You channel Skylar through your intuitive and channeling abilities. And I want to know, when did that, was that with you before this all happened, or did that develop because of this higher spirituality that you were, this higher version of yourself that you were seeking? Because you said
It's
you were before,
definitely,
you already had the merge of the two.
I
Not
always
merging
had
the corporate and the spiritual.
I always had my spiritual gifts switched on and I always had an awareness of Skylar. They were always in my mind. And as a child, I would speak to them, but I didn't know that they were called Skylar at that point in time. And in fact, in my first book, I called them the transition team because I really saw that our job was, and that was me naming them. That was, I saw our job as transitioning people from an asleep state of being into an awakened state of being. And so I was like, these are the guys that helped me do it. And so I called them the transition team because I didn't have another name and it was better than calling them the guys. And because it was just literally, and again, this sounds bonkers, it was just literally like a voice in my head, but it had always been there and it had always been this loving, guiding presence. And every time that my life had a big challenges in it, and I would remember to turn inward, that voice that is Skylar would be this constant source of grace for me. And they would always be there for me to listen, but I needed to listen to them. And most of the time I was freaking out and couldn't hear a goddamn thing that they said because I was like in full on like worry and anxiousness and panic mode and things like that. And it wasn't until my kind of big burnout that I was like, I can't live my life separate from my spiritual gifts anymore. I have to turn inward. I won't survive. And it was a knowing within me that I wouldn't survive if I didn't start going inward. So I knew that I had to change. I had lived my life from outer to inner. So the outer world dictated how my inner world had felt, and my inner world always felt terrible. So that was not a good strategy and hadn't worked out very well for me. When I started to work on my inner energy, my outer world transformed, and both inner and outer began to balance in an energy of my choosing, and which worked out a lot better strategy. And so Skylar's kind of always been there, but the first time that I really full on was overshadowed by Skylar and they literally spoke through me was in a Borders bookshop. So I had a lovely part of my recovery from my multiple organ failure is I had this amazing Ayurvedic doctor who was also an acupuncturist, and he was working a lot in my energy and helping me to when he took my pulse that very first time, which is one of the things that they do in acupuncture, he just looked at me and said, "How are you not dead? Like you literally, there's no chi, like there's literally no life force in the body." And I'm like, I'm hanging in here. So he helped me to start building the chi in my body again and things. And I remember I'd been going to him for a number of months and I had just come across this newfangled thing called the law of attraction. And I had began devouring it and was just like absolutely devouring this thing. And any class that would have me as a student, I was signing up for it. I was watching as much as I was consuming as much content, reading as many books. It's fair to say I became obsessed with it because I realized that this was what my life had been missing. And this was the power to change everything. So I'm telling him, I'm going in for my session. I'm all excited. And I'm telling him about it. And he looks at me and he looks me directly in the eye and he said, "Joanna, if you really want to know a subject, you teach it." And
I
I don't know why.
completely agree with that.
And I was like, why? And it was a permission slip I needed. So I got in the car and I said to my husband, "Drive me to Borders bookshops." And he's like, "Why?" I was like, "I'm going to speak there." And my husband was like, "Okay." So I'm digging around in my handbag for a bit of paper, right? And I pull out a dirty little envelope because that's all the paper I have. And on the envelope, I write these book titles. And I rock up to Borders bookshops and I go straight up to the front desk and I'm like, "I'd like to speak to the manager." And you know that the assistant does that thing where she looks like she sucked a lemon. She's like, oh, we're in trouble here. This woman wants to speak to the manager. And I was like, "No, it's okay. It's good." And so like, I'm now like registering as a red flag and all those things. So I'm like, I like that. So the manager comes out and says, "Hello, can I help you, madam?" And I was like that. I want to come and speak in your shop and promote your law of attraction books. Here's a list of books I can promote for you. And it was all books I read. So I hand him this dirty envelope with all the titles written on it, scrawled on it, while sitting in a moving car. So you can imagine that was very legible. And I handed it to him and he's like that. And I was like, "So I'm going to come and I'll bring you a poster. Like you don't have to advertise anything. Like all I'm asking you is put the leaflets in the poster in the shop. I'll be here in 2 weeks' time and then I will come along and do this talk for you guys and promote these books." And so he's looking around at his assistant that I had originally spoke to, and he's like, he's having an out of body experience at this point in time. He's thinking, "What the hell?" So he goes, "What's in it for you?" And I said, "I get to talk about the law of attraction." So he goes, "Oh, okay." And I literally just convinced him to say yes, and he did. So the next day I returned with a very professional made poster, and I think it calmed him down a little bit. So that first time that I rocked up into Borders bookshops, I had 25 people, random strangers that had come along to come and see me speak. And I began speaking and I did a kind of hour session on the law of attraction, on the power of your mind, how you can begin to change your life through the power of your thinking. And then I opened up a Q&A, and the first few questions were super simple and I was able to answer them no bother. And then came this question, and I remember thinking, that is a great question, but I have no idea what it was. And I was about to respond with, "This is a great question, but I have no idea. And I'll have to get back to you on the answer with that." So I knew that this is exactly what my little Ayurvedic teacher meant. I was going to learn just as much as my students were going to learn. And I thought, this is awesome. But I went to say, "I don't have a clue, but I'll find out for you." And instead, what came out of my mouth was the most sublime, incredible answer. And like it just flowed out. And I'm like standing in a bit of a state of shock. And so I'm looking around and I'm like, did I get away with that? And I'm looking at the audience and everyone's like sitting there nodding and some people are writing notes. And I'm like, shit, that made sense, obviously, because no one looks confused. And so I look at the woman and I said, did that make sense? And these huge tears are running down her face. And she was like, that just spoke straight to my soul. Like, thank you so much. And afterwards she came up and she was shaking. She asked me if she could hug me because it had been so profound for her. And so I was like, holy crap, I don't even like fully remember what I said. So this happened a couple more times that evening. So as I'm leaving the Borders bookshop that day, I'm all like a buzz and I'm like excited and I got to talk about the law of attraction and I'm happy and I'm satisfied. And I'm walking out through the door and the manager runs after me and he hands me a £50 gift card to say thank you because they literally had started to sell out of some of the titles that I had recommended. And so he wanted to give me this card. But honestly, it was like giving crack to a crack addict because I'm like, I love a book. So I'm like, oh my God. So I said, I'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll do it again. And he says, great. And so the next day I dropped another poster in. This time 75 people showed up. And same thing happened again in the Q&A session. This transcendent voice just began speaking through me and just began dropping these wisdom bombs. But this time I brought my mom along and I brought my brother along and they recorded me to get like the recording of it so I could listen back. And when I listened back, I was, holy shit, this is such good stuff. And I knew that I didn't have knowledge of what was coming through me. So a few weeks later, I went back to the Borders bookshop. This time, 125 people showed up to hear me speak about the law of attraction. And it was amazing. And it was really profound. And there was a lot of profound shifts in the audience. And this time there was people who had come like all 3 times. But this time the manager said to me, I'm really sorry. We can't have you back. You're so popular. Like this is like, you're going to have to find a bigger venue because we're only coded like the fire code. Like we're going to start like breaking laws the next time because the time it's increased so much. And we're going to start like breaking the fire code laws if we open this up again. When I said, it's okay, it's good. I think I've done what I needed to do here. And he was like, good. And he was like, but people loved what you've talked about. And he says, and my regional manager wants to know what we've done because these books are flying off the shelves. And I said, there we go. So I said, I'm glad that it was win for both of us. And it really felt win for me. And from that point onwards, I knew that there was something like a lot bigger coming through me. And I realized that when I was working with clients, whether coaching or at that time I used to do like psychic readings as well. I started just to trust that information a lot more rather than holding back and stopping it. When I was in a one-to-one situation, I started to just let it flow. And they were teaching me as much as I was teaching others. And this wisdom was also the wisdom that literally saved my life and allowed me to heal not only from multiple organ failure, but then I had an aftermath. So I ended up with 5 abdominal surgeries. And I also ended up with, I had 2 chronic illnesses and an autoimmune condition that has no name, but the 2 chronic illnesses, I had chronic fatigue and I had chronic unexplained pain syndrome. And I was told I was going to have them for the rest of my life. And I have nothing now. I am pretty fit, healthy, and I am on no regular medication whatsoever for anything. And my doctor's files are actually 3 manila folders. They're massive. And even my doctors, my GPs, like, how are you not on anything? And when they run my blood work and things like that, they're like, your blood work, like you've got some of the best blood we've ever seen and things. And I know that it is a positive mental attitude that is really impacting my health in that way, which is amazing. And I'm grateful for it. And I really, truly believe that if anyone's listening to this and suffering from chronic illness, I will leave you with the quote of Louise Hay, which said, and she was the person that really helped me to see this, was if they say that it's incurable, know that it's incurable from within. And that changed my health life completely, because it became an inside job for me. And when I began working with that, I was able to heal myself and my body.
I can totally relate to a lot of your story, because my personal story is chronic. I've had Graves, autoimmune diseases, chronic fatigue myself, and my spirituality and my abilities to I've had similar channeling experiences where it's just like, what is this coming out of my mouth? I don't know where it's coming from, but it's profound and it works and it's doing what it needs to do. But that spirituality really changed my life health wise. But over time, I'm still learning health wise of how, because we have a body, we're in a body, there's all energies coming and going all the time. So really trusting that. But I can attribute a lot of my healing, remissions in all things that were told I would have for the rest of my life, do no longer have, from my journey starting around that time. That was 15 or so years ago to now. Like within 6 months of starting that journey, they were gone. And so each one of those things, whenever they've come up, that healing that comes with the spirituality, but also abundance is not, I'd love to hear your take on this and what you truly believe abundance is, but abundance is health, wealth. It's all those things that come with thriving. It's not just, I've got the money, so I've got a house over my head and my food on the table. It's really getting to that level of connection with something greater, that and the planet, the universe, and really becoming one with them. So I'd love your take on what abundance truly is for you. And then I really want to talk about the $1 million experiment. We're getting there.
We're getting there. Abundance for me is thriving, I think, in every aspect of your life. True abundance it's wellness of mind, wellness of body, wellness of home, wellness of everything. And abundance is the opposite of scarcity. It is having no lack anywhere and the ability to do or have what it is that you desire in that moment. And that is true freedom and true abundance. And ultimately, for me, the ultimate pinnacle energy of abundance is choice. Having choice. When you are living in lack and you are living in scarcity, it can be boiled down to one thing. There is a lack of choice. If you're out shopping when you're in lack and you're in scarcity and you don't have a lot, there's lots of choices that are off the table for you in that moment. When you are lack of health, there's a lot of choices that disappear off the table for you too. And so ultimately, abundance for me is choice. It's the ability to choose what it is that I desire in that moment and to be able to have that choice and not to have that choice limited or restricted in any way, shape, or form. And so beautiful. That's how I would define it.
I love that. Given your entry into the law of attraction and how wonderful it was in teaching it, obviously it chose you in a way to come through for your purpose.
It's so funny that you say that it chose me, because it stalked me. It literally stalked me. I do not know how many people offered to buy me the book, The Secret, and I turned them down. And I was just like, I don't like stuff that are hyped up. So I didn't even read Harry Potter for like years until after, because everyone was like, oh, it's great. I'm like, oh, don't want to know. And
now you talk about muggles freely.
Absolutely. Love a bit. Love a bit, Harry. This is the funny thing. Do you know what convinced me to buy the book? I'd been, because I'm always been book obsessed. So I went and I kept seeing it on the Tesco #1 bestseller on Tesco's in my local supermarket. And it was there for weeks. And it was like 12 weeks I'd been there. And I thought there must be something in it if it's been there for 12 weeks.
Bless you.
And actually, my first foray into the law of attraction didn't actually go very well, because I got a third of the way through the book, and the book had literally told me that everything in my life was my fault and I had somehow created it. I was raging at the book. And I'm not an abuser of books. I really am not. But I threw that book in the wall and I left it on the floor and I didn't pick it up for 3 days. I just left it there, so mad at it. And every time I like passed it, I gave it daggers. I was like angry. I was so annoyed that, and then I decided that it was a dangerous book because I've always been very like conscious of other people. And I thought, I'm in a bad place, but if I had been in a worse place, then this could be the book that, broke the camel's back, basically. And I wanted to protect other people because that's always been a driver within me. So I was like, that Miss Rhoda Brown that wrote this book, she's going to get it with both barrels. And I was going to write a complaint letter, but I wasn't going to be the stupid person that reads a third of a book to write a complaint letter. Oh God, I was going to read that whole goddamn thing. So you can tell I rocked a lot more anger back then than I do today. But I was going to give it to her with both barrels. I was going to dissect that book. She was going to get told how dangerous it was. And I remember reading the last page of that book and huge big tears streaming down my face and thinking, holy moly, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been waiting for. And then becoming absolutely obsessed with the law of attraction. But my brother has always called me a law of attraction savant because he says, I've learned this. I've read the similar books that you read and everything. And at first they all thought I was crazy when I was telling them about this. Like my whole family thought I was nuts. I was literally losing it when I was telling them about it. And of course, it probably didn't help that I was so excited that trying to get the words out that this was it, eureka moment. And so I was telling them all this stuff and they were just like, my brother was like, he's now fully on board and I've read all the books, I've done all the things, but sometimes the energy doesn't line up for me. And then I'll just go to you. And within seconds, you have diagnosed the problem and you know exactly. And I think for me, what really happened was that book triggered a soul remembrance for me. This is work that I have worked with in lifetimes. And it was a deep soul remembrance. But the first foray in there, right, she was not pretty. There was a lot of and there was a lot of upset.
I can't imagine it was easy, though. The journey's still hard, even though obviously just getting through the book was hard, let alone then taking it and making it your life's work to help other people with their abundance and awakening and inspiring them to have your abundance inside. You have I want to talk about the Millionaire experiment that you're running, which you've run before.
Mm-hmm.
And that desire I just love, I think you mentioned it before with the guy in Borders about the exchange. Like you were there and you're just giving this energy out and he's come back and, oh, here's a voucher, and it was a win for both. Like you've always had that part of you, which is what this $1 million experiment is. What I feel is about is that everybody gets to win, and it's everybody coming together to win. And I really love that, which is why I've signed up myself. I'm part of the gang. But what drew you what was the drive in that? Was that part of it, or to actually come up with it the first time? But now you're doing it again, which is just as crazy. For 20 to be a part of this experiment for a year. So tell us about it.
So let's tell people about the experiment first and foremost. So the experiment is a year-long container. So that makes your results measurable against that year. And then we're asking the question, can mindset and intuition training, along with $1 million plan, make you a millionaire in just 1 year? So we asked that question in 2021 and we had no idea. Like I suspected yes, but I had no idea how it would pan out, how it would all pan out, basically. I had no idea.
Can I ask one question? Were you a millionaire yet? Okay. Yeah.
In 2021, no. The reason it was called an experiment was because I had set the intention to become a millionaire. So when I had set the intention to become a millionaire in 2021, I set the intention in 2020, and I set that intention very shortly after. Let's go back to the beginning of the story, actually, because this is a really good story.
Right. I jumped ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So what happened was I had a client who was having a really down day, right? Like days where you feel like you're just grumpy, right? And she was just having a bad day. And I understood she was having a bad day and things like that, but she felt like her goals were a million miles away. And as I'm speaking / channeling in her session, I am reminded by Skylar of this book that I had began to write 8 years prior. So this is at the very end of 2019. And so I'm like, okay. So I said, go. She was in the US. I said, go get $1. I said, go run, go get it. And so she runs off and she gets $1. I said, you got your $1 in your hand. And I said, how? I said, if you took that $1 and you bought something for $2, or you bought something for $1, sold it for $2, bought something for $2, sold it for $4, bought something for $4, sold it for $8, and so forth. How many times do you think you would need to do that in order to become a millionaire? And she was like, I don't know, like 4,000 or something like that, because she was having a bad day, right? And so I said, no, come on now. Play the game, girlfriend. Come on. And so she was like, I don't know, maybe 100 or something like that. I don't know. And I said, would it surprise you that it's only 20 times? And she was
Surprised
like,
me when you said that. The first time. When he died.
20 times. I said, you only need to do it 20 times. I said, so while you're sat there thinking your goals are so far away, I said, girlfriend, you have $1, which means you're only 20 steps away from being a millionaire. She came bouncing off that call. She was absolutely high as a kite. She was posting on Facebook after. She was filled with the spirit of life. And I was like, I was really happy. But then it got me thinking. I was like, hang on, wait a minute. Like, I began writing that book. I wonder if it still lives in the doldrums of my hard drive. Because it was 8 years prior, I began writing that book, and I'd become a published author since then. At the time when I wrote that, I had not published a single thing. I searched, and lo and behold, there it is with a super snazzy name of 19 steps. And so I was like, cool. And I read, and I realized I'd written 22,000 words. And I read it and I thought, holy moly, this is like really good stuff. This is amazing. So that night I went to bed and I printed out the manuscript and I held it in my hands. And I said to Source, Source, show me what to do with this material. Because I realized that the woman who began writing that material was not equipped to deliver the material, but the woman that I had become in those 8 years of building a multiple 6-figure business, building an online education business, she was ready to take this information out into the world and out into the public. And she knew exactly what to do, but I needed to be shown what to do with it. So show me what to do with this. So the next morning I wake up, I swing my legs out my bed, I get one foot on the ground and the second foot hasn't even landed on the ground. And the mother of all downloads just literally arrives into my consciousness. I knew the branding colors. I knew the name. I knew that it would have 52 lab notes. I knew that there would be a podcast. I was like, shit, better start my podcast. I knew that there was so many things. Like, I knew exactly what it would look like. And then, of course, the whammy was, and it will be $25. And what you have to understand about me, I have courses that are thousands of dollars. So $25 for a whole year. Somebody's going to have to hand me a brown paper bag to breathe a little bit, to readjust my energy here. I'm like, holy moly. And so I had to sit with it to start with, because I was like, I don't know if I can hold energy for people, because a big part of me holding energy for others is being in what I call squeaky clean energy. Squeaky clean energy is where you're holding the energy in total integrity. You want to be there. You want to be the teacher. And I was like, I don't know if I want to give people a year of my time and my life for $25. Like that is going to require me to really think about that and really think, is this something that I can be in squeaky clean energy and integrity with? So I sat and I thought about it for about 3 days. And I started playing the numbers and I said, what if 50 people join? And I thought, that does not feel good. Like, it felt great in the beginning, but then as I ran the months down towards the December, I was like, So I started and I got to the number of 200 and I was able to do the whole year at 200 people. And I felt great, awesome. And I looked at my list at the time, it was 2,500 people. And I said, surely there is 200 people in that 2,500 people that want to get a little bit with me and do this thing of like experiment. And it's $25. and they can earn their money back from the affiliate program because I'd already received that in the download as well, which is another reason why I had to be like, hang on, wait a minute, I really need to think about this, you know?
And now I'm only making $12.50.
Exactly, right? So I'm like, hang on, babies. We need to check this out in the energy first. So once I was settled in my own energy, that's when I was like, we're going to do this thing. And I started making moves to creating this. Now, I'd never run an affiliate program before in my life. I'd never run a podcast before in my life. So there was a learning curve to all of this. And I also realized that my systems and like things like cart system and how people pay me and things, all of that needed upgrading. So there was a lot of kind of background work. And then in August 20th of 2020, we launched the $1 Million Experiment just to my email list. And it was a soft launch to begin with. And then we did our official launch on the 1st of September. So from the 1st of September to the 31st of December, people could sign up for the $1 Million Experiment. And I ended up with 4,300 people.
Wow.
And what happened was we were at 2,000 and something we were, just under 2,000 actually in December 31st, midnight when the cart closed. I woke up on the 1st of January to over 50 people begging me across all my platforms, asking me, please let me buy this thing and come in and join you. And I'm one of these people that like to really do my work in integrity. So I don't like to be one of these people like carts closing and then, it's not. If I say that I'm going to do something, I want to follow through. I want to be true to my word. It's important for me to be true to my word. So I don't like that type of business. I find it shady. It's not something I enjoy being part of. But my husband was like, Joanna, you are going to have a sit down with Skylar, and because these people are wanting to learn from you and you need to like have a word with yourself. And I think he was just like, instead of him having a word, I think he just gave that job to Skylar. So he's go meditate and go and chat to them. And so I sat down and I was like, what will I do? Because like I'm a person that's true to my word and I'm not playing this game. Like I'm not playing this game where I don't follow through on what I say. So Skylar says to me, okay, we respect that and great. And they said, but officially, week 52 does not actually end to the 3rd of January because of the way that the week was, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm still in integrity because I did say like the end of the official year, right? So
I thought you were going to say summer in the world. It's not the 30th. It's still the,
still
the 31st.
Well, we opened the cart again at 11 o'clock that morning on the 1st of January. Between the 1st of January and the 3rd of January, 2,300 people joined us. And it just went super viral. And at one point in time, we were processing 6 sales a minute. And it was just insane. It was like my whole team. And what was so beautiful was I had a team of people helping me and stuff like that. But they weren't scheduled for the hours that they needed to put in. But they said to me, I will never forget. And it was the first time that in my life that I felt like this level of support. They said, Joel, just go and be you. Just get out there on the social medias. Go be you. Go do your thing. Don't worry about a thing in the back end here. We will take care of the customers and we will onboard them all. And they did it in shifts and they were working to midnight every night that those 3 days. But they were so excited as well. Like our business was blowing up and they were really excited. So we ended up on the 1st of January with 32K day. It was 1st of January 2021. That's how my January started. So by the end of 2021, 1 in every 287 participants out of that 4,000 participants had becoming millionaire.
Wow.
We created 15 new millionaires in that year. And then we had people who had hit 500,000. We had people who had hit 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, first 10K months. The stories that came out of the experiment after that first year were extraordinary. I had one woman, and this is the story that just slays me because the result has nothing to do with the experiment and yet everything to do with the experiment. She messages me from a hospital car park. So that's how the message starts. I'm in a hospital car park, and I thought, oh dear Lord, what's happened? And she said, I'm in a state of shock. And I thought, oh my goodness, as I'm reading this message, and I'm like that. And she says, I've just been taken off the organ transplant list. I didn't use your experiment. I applied the principles of your experiment to my health, and I've healed my body to such an extent that they've removed me off the organ transplant list. And my doctor cannot even believe he's just told me to go and have a long and happy life. And I was told that if I got a transplant, I would maybe have a 2-year survival.
Oh my God.
And like, she's being told that to go and have a lovely and happy life. And the other day I saw her on Facebook there celebrating her daughter's birthday, and knowing that's a birthday that she might not have been around for. And there she is, and seeing her in the picture smiling and looking healthy and it's holy moly.
That's okay.
And that is everything, right? Like that right there. But the people's lives that were transformed, the people who entered that experiment thinking they could never be a millionaire and exiting that experiment, telling me things like, it's just a matter of time now. But it's just gonna, like, I'm just waiting for like the universe to do its thing and catch up. And one of the things that I'm really advocate really boldly in my life and in my business is no hustle ever. So I don't teach hustle. I teach ease, joy, and flow. And so knowing that these people are receiving these results through the energy of ease, joy, and flow, as opposed to they're having to like force it and push and hustle and make it happen. None of that crap. Because that is what leads, that word hustle is what paves the road to burnout. Ease, joy, and flow is how we rock and roll in my world. And so that's what I teach. And now in 2024, we're running the experiment again. We're giving now it's a brand new freaking day because we know this works. But this time, what the invite is, can we duplicate our results? Can we improve upon our results? Is what we're looking for this time. And we are 3 years smarter down the line. We've run other experiments that have had a huge success. We've created a program called Heal Your Abundance, that was really born out of the $1 Million experiment. We realized a lot of people had very dodgy relationship with abundance. That there was a real, I know my own relationship with abundance used to look like something that was fit for the Jerry Springer show. So it was like one of those really awful spousal abuse situations. And it was like, and that was my relationship with abundance. And I realized in hindsight now, obviously it's so obvious because like other people are maybe have a similar relationship to that. But at the time running the experiment, not so obvious. So that came up for a lot of people. Like they're kind of like the ugly truth started to rise to the surface of the fact that they did not have a good relationship with abundance in the first place. But they still had massive shifts during the experiment. But what we decided to do was put this thing in place, it called Heal Your Abundance, and really start getting people to really start improving their relationship to the energy of abundance. So that when it came to executing the $1 Million plan, a lot easier, a lot smoother. They're not bumping up against their own limiting beliefs or their own dishonesty. And that's a weird thing to say, right? Because a lot of people are like, I'm not dishonest, but we lie to ourselves all the time.
All the time.
Like one of the things that we've just covered in Heal Your Abundance is the self-soothing, right? Is I don't want a fancy house. I don't need that. That's not even me. But you just lied. I prefer the apartment that's 2 feet by 2 feet where I can barely swing a cat. No person ever said. It doesn't mean that you want like a kind of a house that looks like a homage to a mausoleum. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that you would enjoy more space if you could have it. And so it's about being honest with your life. It's about being honest with yourself, basically. And that's very important. And often a lot of people enter the $1 Million experiment the first time round still with these very dishonest relationships with themselves and learning to be more honest. So The $1 million experiment is literally the best deal on the internet. We now know that it works. So you're still entering into an experiment, but it's not something that we are really totally clueless about like we were the first year. Now we know that it gets results. We are offering a year of mindset and intuition training. You get access to my $1 million experiment book. You do not need to buy the experiment. You can actually get that book on Amazon if you wanted to just read the book. It's there. But everybody gets an online copy of that book. You get 52 lab notes. So its lab note is like a little note each week for starting the 1st of January. And it's really just giving you like an insight or something to think about. I talk about swirling it around your gray matter and really just ponder it, think about it. How could this point of view maybe or perspective change things for you? What would it be like to look life through that lens or whatever? And it's just to help you shift your consciousness. And what we are looking for is actually we're not looking to create massive shifts. This is the weirdness of my world. We look to create micro shifts that you can keep sustaining in your energy that create massive shifts down the line. Change something just 2% here in 3 months' time. That is a massive difference from where you started. But the reason why change is not sustainable for so many people is they try and do the big macro change straight off the bat, and they are not ready for it. So what happens is they're able to maintain it for a little while, but then they go back to the original kind of factory settings of where they were at before, or sometimes even worse, right? Which is why you'll die, which is why we hear people who make big amounts of money and then lose it all and stuff. They're not able to maintain the vibration and the frequency. I'm not into teaching people how to have a quick result with that they will then eventually lose because they can't maintain the vibration. I'm all about creating the vibration that will give a permanent result, a result that stays with them forever. So we move in these tiny little like, ponder this, think about this, and it starts to shift your consciousness to the point where your consciousness can hold this much, much bigger experience. And you're not going to revert back to the old way of being because your consciousness has actually changed and it's not being forcibly held in the new container.
Yeah. Even my experience of just transforming, there is such thing as a quantum leap, but it looks like you've made a quantum leap, but the work that went into it prior is huge. Like, that just happened, but really it didn't. Like, this step, this healing, this move, this activation, they're all part of it. And all of a sudden, I did a quantum leap. But actually, you didn't. It's been lifetimes.
You are preaching to the choir here because it's one of my biggest things. I think in the online world, people are really obsessed with this quantum leap thing. And I think what happens is that they become so obsessed with it that they forget to praise and bless the increments that actually make up the quantum leap. So they look at that one person that just joined their program and they're like, this is not enough. And but you can't get to 100 without getting through one first.
Yeah.
But it's all connected. And if you're not happy with one, you're not going to be happy with 100 either. So you have to learn to say today one was enough. And then tomorrow, maybe 2 people jump in and you got to say that was enough. And, I never got to 4,300 people in one singular program of mine without having to go through one and every number between that first. And every single one who joined us were just as important as that first one and as that last one. That every single person was just as important. And I think, it's so true. The quantum leap is such an illusionary state. And I think some people get so caught in chasing it, they forget that they could be making big progress right now, just one increment at a time.
Yeah, exactly. I have to ask you, so who is the experiment for? So who can come into it? What type of people? Who are you calling into it?
Do you know, honestly, the experiment is for 2015, Joanna. It was the person that I was back in 2015 who felt like she was on the bones of her ass, who desperately really wanted change, wanted to live a different life. felt like she had a big song in her heart that she wanted to share with the world, and felt like deep down, if she was being really honest with herself, but often wasn't, but if she was being really honest with herself, felt like she was meant for more, and probably would have been too afraid to admit that to other humans at that time.
Mhm.
And anybody who feels like they've been meant for more, anybody who feels like, I'm done being broke financially, anybody who is in that place of, and you don't have to have a business, right? Because we give you a plan. A business is just one channel in which abundance can flow to you. There's thousands, millions of channels in which abundance can flow to you, right? Let's not be picky and choosy which channel. Money is money, right?
Yeah.
We're happy to receive it. As long as it's come from an ethical source, we're all good. And so this is the thing. There's so many places that we can receive money from, and being open to abundance. And so it's really for, I always say, it's really for that earlier version of me. And at $25, that would have made it affordable for 2015, Joanna. If it had been $1,000, if it had been $2,000, I would have been out. I would have looked at that and been like, mm-mm.
Yeah.
And that's not possible for me. And so $25 and the means to make that money back. If you want to join the optional affiliate program and share the affiliate link, we've had our first person in the experiment cross $2,000 in earnings. So they
Wow.
paid $5 and they've earned over $2,000.
Mm.
And what makes this person even more special is that they're actually going to donate some of their money to a charity as well. So they're going to donate. So I'm so happy every time I see that my little PayPal's leaving my account to go to this person. I'm so delighted. They have brought me all of these amazing humans into my world. And then on top of that, they're donating this money to charity. And I am beyond like happy and grateful to see this.
I have to say, me signing up, I have worked with you before, but it was a bit of a no-brainer for me. But actually, it has inspired this podcast. It has inspired, like, already. We're not even in it yet. You know what I mean? Like, just things like, not this exact podcast that we're listening to now, but the actual, the calling in me to use my voice, to use my great ability to ask questions and explore, and the curiosity that I have. And I was just like, and I remember watching one of the lives and you were talking and I was like, she's just giving me permission to do what I want to do. You had me on a podcast. I was like, rightio, you've just given me the permission to run this podcast. It's already working and it hasn't even started. And I think for me, I love the being in the energy of other people wanting to be abundant. And I think that is also necessary when you want to be abundant. We talked about the 5 people, but really, whenever I've created any change, whether it's in my own containers with my own clients, I always have movement when that's happening as well. But if I'm putting myself in other containers of abundance, it's necessary for my journey too. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where it all ends up for everybody. I think it's going to be really powerful,
I mean,
whether you make the million or not, right?
It's going to be extraordinary. Some of the stories that have come through from the $1 Million Experiment have just really blown me away. I recently had a retreat in my house, and 3 of the women who were at that retreat revealed that they had come into my world through the experiment, which is really cool. Like they didn't know who Joanna Hunter was, and so a friend of a friend had given them like this link and, hey, do you want to come and do this thing? It's an experiment to see if you can become a millionaire in a year. And they were like, $25, I'm in. So they were like, I'm in, let's do it. And so that's how they had arrived into my world. And here they were in my home in a retreat a few years later. And one of the women said that I joined at the 11th hour. I was given the link like super late. I think it was like the 1st of January or something like that. A mentor of mine had sent me the link and was like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I was like, $25, sure, I'm going to give it a whirl for that, is what she said. And so she could never have imagined herself as a millionaire when she entered the experiment. So she sat down that year and she thought, if I can make £32,000 this year, and she's a farmer. And so she was like, if I can make £32,000 that year, I'd be delighted. So she jumped into the experiment and she began working on her mindset and began working on things. That year, she made £64,000. She
Wow. Doubled it.
her
Yeah, that's incredible, right?
what her initial goal was. But furthermore, I asked her, when you exited your year, having made £64,000, how did you now feel about the million? Because she had started that year thinking, I'm going to set my goal at 32 because a million's just not possible for me. That was so far away from her. She's, oh yeah, it's just a matter of time for me. That was, and I know that this client, this woman has now since become a client, joined my business program, things like that. And what I know is that I know it's a matter of time before it happens. One of the other ladies, she sold seeds for $1.99 a packet on Amazon, and that was her business, right? She had £37,000 month on $1.99 seeds. Hello, you know, and she was just delightful at the retreat because she was telling me about all these homes that she wants to own and the traveling that she wants to do and like dreaming big, like really big. And again, had worked many years in a bank and really thought being a millionaire was for other folk. It wasn't for people like her and her husband they were workers. They had jobs and her husband had a company and she had she'd always had work and things like that. So never thought that this was something. And now I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a millionaire. And I said, I know. And because it is that simple. It's a choice. It's a decision that someone makes. And I know it's a matter of time. These people are growing. They're just brewing. There'll come a time where the thing will just go ding in the energy and they're done. And the year will have manifested for them that they want. And then the third lady that joined us in a really bad place in her life, like she had literally come to the end of her marriage. She had left an abusive marriage. She had no job, suddenly a single mama, recovering from verbal and abuse and mental abuse, and joined and came in and again, same story. Didn't think she could ever be a millionaire, but hey, it's $25. Let's give it a whirl. But for her, it was, hang on a minute, lady. Let me think about that. Let me think if this is like this. And it was so beautiful to hear. She was like, I don't know how I would have been able to get through that year if it hadn't been for the experiment. It was what lifted me through some of the darkest days. And I don't know how I'd be able to do it. Did I hit the goal? No, I didn't. But guess what? Here I am in your home at a retreat that I would have told myself in that state of energy back then I could never have afforded and I could never have been part of. And here I am. And I know it's a matter of time before I can become a millionaire as well. And I know that it's people just like me that do it. And I know I have something valuable to give the world. And are those results less than the people who hit the million? In my opinion, no. They're as valuable as, because I would have imagined when lovely Sally crossed her £64,000 that year, it would have felt like winning the freaking lottery because she doubled something that she thought was a stretch.
Yeah.
But that would have felt every bit as sweet at the moment when I crossed the $1 million for my company.
Yeah, it's actually, I think that's the powerful bit about it is that it's like when you have the person who doesn't have that teacher that says you've got this, you're going to be okay, showing some kind of expansion. You don't have that person to the comparison of, hey, at this moment in time, this year is going to be your year in some way when you're part of this and then to come out of it, like I wasn't even thinking this was possible. Like it wouldn't have even crossed their mind to think it would be possible. Do you know what I mean? To come out the other side going, it's only a matter of time. And I think that is the shift in abundance, the shift in the mindset of abundance. If you shift that to, it's only a matter of time before it's this, and just trusting that divine timing of it as well. Because we all have our own individual nuances in our story of how we do become abundant, I think. and everybody's
Yeah.
just different.
Yeah, we don't get abundance. And I think that's the biggest shift that people are going to
Yeah.
make is that we don't get abundance. We tune into it and we allow it. And so there has to be an element within the
Become
own
it.
self of being ready for it, right? Are we ready for it? And there's a readiness to abundance. And when the $1 million experiment is such a perfect, beautiful example for me, had the $1 million experiment happened 6 months prior to when it actually happened, it would have been what I call an F my life situation, right? Because this huge influx of people, we would not have been ready for that. We would not have had the systems in place. So instead of it being this wave that we rode and this wave that was so fun and so exciting and we were buzzing, that instead of it being like that, it would have been a wave that engulfed us and pulled us down and made us feel like we were drowning. And it would have been like, oh my God, F my life right now. Like we would have been felt overwhelmed by it all. And that's just the divine timing of life. If you had asked Joanna 6 months prior to launching the $1 million experiment, are you ready? I would have been like, yes, I wasn't. Because if you were ready, it will show up for you. If you are not ready, trust that the reason it's not showing up for you is that there is something in your energy field that is just quite not ready yet.
Yeah.
It just needs maybe a little adjustment, or it might need a big adjustment. Who knows? But there's just something in your energy field that requires more readiness. And there was challenges. Like we had challenges with the first thing. It was the first time we'd ever done anything of that size and magnitude and stuff. So there was a lot of kind of logistics to figure out. And like now, what's so pleasurable is like now it's like another day at the office, because it's like we're used to dealing with people in larger volumes and stuff like that. And when we've got lots of really good systems to support us. And I've got, of course, my wonderful, incredible team that I cannot say enough about, who I know everybody who joins the experiment will fall in love with my team as well, because they are really A1. And when you will feel their love and you will feel their support across that year, holding you and holding space for you as much as I'm holding space for everybody too.
Yeah, they've really got the I've got you energy. I can feel it's the words that when you were speaking about them earlier, saying to you, we've got this, we've got this. They've got, I've got your back, got you. And I think that's absolutely divine when you have a team who, not only you, but I've got you and your customers and the people who are part of it. So I think that's a testament to your team and you for being able to activate that within you to receive that full support. I think it's brilliant.
Well, that didn't come easy. That's a whole other podcast.
Yes,
So
there was a whole. Well, I'll invite you back for the abundance of support.
That is a whole other episode. But I am so grateful for the people that I have that support me in this.
Yeah, beautiful. And so thank you so much. I am going to put the link for my affiliate link, because that's what this is all about, into my podcast notes. So anyone who comes on can actually come and join us, because I'm looking forward to having people I know in the group, as well as learning and meeting new people, which would be fantastic. I do have one more question though. Is there a specific question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered it?
Oh, I think we actually covered everything. I never go into podcast interviews with any expectations. I love for a podcast interview to be a river that just meanders of like really good, juicy conversation. And I feel like for your first podcast, you nailed it. There's so much I think that people listening to this are going to take away from this. And I know that anyone listening to this is going to probably be clicking that subscribe button to make sure that they catch your next episode.
Oh, thank you. We had a lot to cover, and I'm so grateful that you said yes. This is what it's about. This is what I'm moving towards. And it just felt right. Listeners, I look forward to seeing you either in the experiment and when you get the next podcast coming your way. At the moment, we've got a few little opportunities. I've got a meditation and abundance activation that people can get as a free gift when they sign up to hear my podcast first, which is really exciting. And it's such a beautiful journey for women to get them through and opening their abundance a bit more. I'll have a link below for that as well. And it's all going to be beautiful. So thank you, Joanna. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for
And
having me as your first guest.
I think we may have you on again. For sure. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Beautiful. Have a beautiful day. And here's to your abundance.
And that wraps up another soul-nourishing episode of Your Abundance Podcast. I hope our time together has left you feeling inspired, enlightened, and ready to embrace the abundance that life has to offer. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on our future conversations. And hey, sharing is caring, so feel free to spread the abundance by sharing this podcast with your fellow seekers. And I can't wait to have our next conversation on Your Abundance Podcast. See you then.